The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the Meridian Financial Building, casting long shadows across the polished floors. It was Monday and the office buzzed with the usual start-of-week energy, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and the soft hum of conversation floating between cubicles. For most employees, it was just another day at the office, but for Diane Wells, it was quickly becoming one of the worst days of her career. Diane had been working at Meridian for just over 2 years. At 29, she was one of the youngest junior executives in the company's history, a fact she reminded herself of whenever things got tough. Today, though, that accomplishment felt hollow as she stared at her computer screen, reading the third angry email from her boss in the span of an hour. The Henderson proposal was due this morning, the email read. The client is waiting. This is unacceptable. Diane ran her fingers through her dark hair, fighting back tears. She had stayed up until 2 a.m. working on that proposal, only to discover this morning that she had saved the final version to her personal laptop instead of uploading it to the company server. Her laptop, of course, was sitting on her kitchen table at home. She had called her roommate begging her to send the file, but her roommate had already left for her nursing shift. The deadline had come and gone, and now Diane was facing the consequences, possibly even a note in her permanent file, which could derail her chances for the promotion she had been working toward for months. It's not the end of the world, whispered Tanya from the neighboring cubicle, sliding a chocolate bar across the desk divider. Everyone makes mistakes. Diane accepted the chocolate with a weak smile but couldn't bring herself to open it. Her stomach was in knots. Not everyone, she muttered, thinking of Reed Thompson, her main competition for the promotion, who never seemed to make a single error. Mr. Patel wants to see you in his office, announced Tanya, wincing sympathetically. He just messaged me to tell you. Diane's heart sank even further. B.J. Patel was not just her boss but the department head. If he was getting involved, this was worse than she thought. The walk to his office felt like the longest journey of her life. Each step on the carpeted floor seemed to echo her failure. Colleagues glanced up as she passed, some offering encouraging smiles, others quickly looking away. News traveled fast in an office this size. Come in, Mr. Patel called when she knocked on his door. His voice was firm but not angry, which somehow made it worse. Disappointment was always harder to bear than anger. Sit down, Diane, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I think we need to talk about what happened with the Henderson proposal. For 15 painful minutes, Diane sat and listened as her boss detailed the importance of the proposal, the client's frustration, and the potential business they might lose as a result of her mistake. He was professional, never raising his voice, which only increased Diane's shame. I understand, sir, she said when he finally paused. I take full responsibility. I've already contacted my roommate to send the file as soon as she gets home, and I've started recreating some of the key sections from memory in case that falls through. Mr. Patel nodded, seemingly satisfied with her response. I appreciate your accountability. That's why you've been successful here, Diane. But I need you to understand that in our business, deadlines aren't suggestions. They're promises to our clients. Yes, sir. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. I'm giving Reed the lead on the Henderson account for now, but you'll still be part of the team. Prove yourself there and we'll revisit the situation. Diane felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Reed getting the lead meant he was now the front runner for the promotion. 2 years of late nights, working weekends, and sacrificed vacations, all potentially wasted because of one mistake. Thank you for the opportunity, she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. I won't let you down again. The walk back to her desk was even worse than the walk to his office. She felt as if everyone was watching her, judging her. In reality, most people were too absorbed in their own work to notice, but in Diane's mind, the weight of her failure was visible to all. By the time she returned to her cubicle, her head was pounding. She rummaged through her desk drawer for pain relievers but couldn't find any. Great, one more thing to add to this disaster of a day. I have some if you need them, Tanya offered. But Diane shook her head. I'm going to check if there's any in the break room, she said, needing a moment away from her desk and the mountain of emails that had accumulated during her meeting with Mr. Patel. The break room was mercifully empty when Diane entered. She leaned against the counter, taking deep breaths, trying to regain her composure. The reflection in the microwave door showed a woman on the edge. Eyes rimmed with red, complexion pale, lips pressed into a tight line. Pull yourself together, she whispered to her reflection. It's just a setback. You've faced worse. It was true. Growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs to make ends meet, Diane had learned early that life wasn't fair. She'd put herself through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, graduated with honors, and fought for her position at Meridian against candidates from more privileged backgrounds with Ivy League degrees. One bad day wasn't going to define her. With renewed determination, she opened the first aid kit mounted on the wall, found some pain relievers, and swallowed them with a cup of water. Then she straightened her shoulders, fixed her hair, and headed back to her desk, ready to face the rest of the day. That resolve lasted exactly 7 minutes. Diane had just settled back at her desk and was typing a response to an urgent client email when she noticed something was wrong. Her car keys, which she always placed in the small ceramic dish at the corner of her desk, were missing. At first, she thought she might have put them in her purse or jacket pocket without thinking, but a quick search confirmed they weren't there. She looked under papers behind her computer monitor and even checked if they had fallen to the floor. "Everything okay?" Tanya asked, peering over the cubicle divider. "My car keys are gone," Diane replied, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. After the morning she'd had, this felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke on her. Just then, a small noise from the other side of her cubicle caught her attention. Diane turned to see a young girl, no more than 8 or 9 years old, standing by her desk. The child had olive skin, dark eyes, and long black hair pulled back in a neat braid. She was wearing a school uniform, a pleated navy skirt and white blouse, and clutching something in her small hands. Diane's keys, the stress of the day, the meeting with Mr. Patel, the lost promotion opportunity, and now this. It all came crashing down in a single moment of misdirected anger. "What are you doing with my keys?" Diane demanded, her voice sharper than she intended, loud enough to turn heads in the surrounding cubicles. The girl jumped, startled by the harsh tone, her eyes widening with fear and confusion. I was looking at the dolphin," the child stammered, pointing to the small blue dolphin keychain attached to the ring. "It's pretty." Diane snatched the keys from the girl's hand, aware that she was overreacting but unable to stop herself. "You can't just take people's things. Who are you? Why are you even in this office?" The girl's lower lip trembled and tears welled in her dark eyes. Several colleagues had stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. "Where are your parents?" Diane continued, her voice echoing in the suddenly quiet office space. "This is a professional workplace, not a playground." A movement near the elevator caught Diane's eye. A woman in a gray uniform was pushing a cleaning cart toward them, her face a mask of concern. The name tag pinned to her uniform read, Isabel, and the family resemblance between her and the young girl was unmistakable. Isabel hurried over, placing a protective arm around the child's shoulders. "Lena, what are you doing over here? I told you to stay by my cart and read your book." The girl, Lena, was now crying openly, tears streaming down her round cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mama, I just wanted to see the dolphin. I didn't mean to take it." Isabel looked up at Diane, embarrassment and apology written across her features. "I'm so sorry, miss. My daughter didn't mean any harm. Our regular babysitter canceled last minute, and the school had a half day. I had no choice but to bring her with me." Before Diane could respond, a deeper voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Diane turned to see Mr. Patel standing just a few feet away, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene. Diane standing rigidly by her desk, the crying child, the embarrassed custodian, and the circle of silent onlookers. In that moment, Diane realized how the situation must look to everyone watching. Her face flushed with shame as she became aware of her overreaction. Her harsh words to a child who had simply been fascinated by a colorful keychain. 10 seconds ago, she had been the one in control, righteously angry about her property. Now, as she met Mr. Patel's questioning gaze and saw the judgment in her colleague's eyes, no one in the office was smiling, least of all Diane herself. The office had fallen into an uncomfortable silence. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the air conditioning and Lena's muffled sobs as she pressed her face against her mother's uniform. Diane stood frozen, the car keys clutched tightly in her hand, the small blue dolphin keychain dangling between her fingers. Mr. Patel cleared his throat. "Isabel, why don't you and your daughter come with me? Diane, I'd like to speak with you in my office, again." The way he said again made Diane's stomach twist into an even tighter knot. Twice in one day, this couldn't be good. She watched as Mr. Patel gently guided Isabel and Lena toward the small conference room near the break area, speaking to them in a kind, hushed tone that Diane couldn't quite make out. As soon as they were out of earshot, the whispers began. "Did you see how she yelled at that poor little girl? Who does that? She's just a child. Talk about an overreaction." Diane felt her cheeks burn as she gathered her notepad and pen, preparing for what would surely be an unpleasant conversation with her boss. Tanya caught her eye from across the cubicle divider, her expression a mixture of sympathy and disappointment. "That's Isabel's daughter," Tanya said quietly. "Isabel's been cleaning our offices for nearly 5 years. She's good people." The simple statement hit Diane like a physical blow. Of course, others in the office would know Isabel and her daughter. While Diane had been climbing the corporate ladder, focused solely on deadlines and promotions, others had been forming relationships with everyone in the building, even the cleaning staff. The walk to Mr. Patel's office felt even longer than before. This time there were no encouraging smiles from colleagues, only averted gazes or looks of quiet judgment. Diane kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, trying to ignore the whispers that followed in her wake. Mr. Patel was already seated behind his desk when Diane knocked and entered. He gestured to the chair across from him without speaking, his expression unreadable. "Sir, I can explain," Diane began, but Mr. Patel held up a hand to silence her. "Before you say anything, I want you to think carefully about what just happened out there," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You publicly humiliated a child and her mother over a set of keys that were not even stolen, merely picked up by a curious 8-year-old. When he put it that way, Diane felt even worse. "I know, and I'm sorry. It's been a rough day, but that's no excuse for how I behaved." Mr. Patel nodded slowly. "No, it's not. Especially since this isn't just any child. This is Lena Rodriguez. Her mother Isabel has been with our company for 5 years. She works 2 jobs to support herself and her daughter after her husband was killed in a construction accident 3 years ago." Diane's heart sank even further. She hadn't known any of this. In fact, until today, she probably wouldn't have recognized Isabel if they had passed in the hallway. "Isabel normally has a babysitter for Lena on school half-days," Mr. Patel continued, "but the arrangement fell through at the last minute today. Rather than miss work, Isabel called our office manager and asked permission to bring Lena with her. Permission that was granted, I might add." Each word felt like another stone added to the weight of guilt pressing down on Diane's chest. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No, you didn't," Mr. Patel agreed. "Because you didn't ask. You saw someone you perceived as beneath your notice touching your belongings, and you reacted with anger and condescension." The truth of his words stung. Diane wanted to defend herself, to explain that her reaction had nothing to do with Isabel's job and everything to do with the stress of her day, but she knew it wouldn't matter. The damage was done. "Meridian Financial isn't just about numbers and deadlines, Diane," Mr. Patel said, leaning forward in his chair. "We pride ourselves on creating a community here, one where everyone from the CEO to the cleaning staff is treated with dignity and respect. That's been our company culture from the beginning." Diane nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I understand, sir. Do you?" he challenged. "Because the woman you just humiliated in front of the entire department isn't just a cleaner. Isabel has an accounting degree from her home country that isn't recognized here in the States. She's been taking night classes at the community college to get recertified. In fact, last year during the Henderson audit, the same client whose proposal you missed the deadline for today, Isabel noticed a discrepancy in some of the numbers while cleaning the conference room after hours. She brought it to my attention, and it ended up saving the company from a significant error." Diane looked up, surprised. "I didn't know that." "There's a lot you don't know, Diane, and that's the problem." Mr. Patel sighed, removing his glasses and pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're excellent at your job when it comes to the technical aspects. Your reports are always thorough, your analysis is spot on, and until today your attention to deadlines was impeccable. But there's more to being a leader at Meridian than just the technical skills." The word leader caught Diane's attention. Was he referring to the promotion she'd been hoping for? "The position you've been pursuing," Mr. Patel continued as if reading her thoughts, "requires someone who can connect with people at all levels. Someone who understands that our success depends on every person in this building. From the executives to the maintenance staff, today you demonstrated that you might not be ready for that responsibility. Diane felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. In a single day, she had jeopardized years of hard work, first with the missed deadline and now with this incident. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Patel regarded her thoughtfully. "That depends on whether you're asking how to fix your chances at the promotion or how to make things right with Isabel and Lena." The question took Diane aback. Until that moment, her primary concern had been damage control for her career. The fact that Mr. Patel could see that so clearly was humbling. "Both, I suppose," she admitted. "But making things right with them comes first." For the first time since she'd entered his office, Mr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "That's a start," he said. "Isabel and Lena are still in the conference room. I suggest you begin there with a sincere apology. As for your professional standing, this incident will be noted in your performance review. The promotion decision hasn't been finalized yet, but I won't lie to you. This doesn't help your case." Diane nodded, accepting the consequences of her actions. "I understand, sir. Thank you for your honesty." As she stood to leave, Mr. Patel added, "Diane, we all have bad days. What defines us isn't the mistakes we make, but how we respond to them. Remember that." With those words echoing in her mind, Diane left the office and made her way to the conference room. Through the glass wall, she could see Isabel sitting at the table, an arm around Lena, who was drawing in a small notebook, her face still tear-stained but no longer actively crying. Diane paused outside the door, gathering her courage. The entire office seemed to be watching, waiting to see what she would do. Reed Thompson, her competition for the promotion, was openly staring from his desk, a barely concealed smirk on his face. Tanya gave her an encouraging nod. Mr. Patel had emerged from his office and was observing from a distance. Taking a deep breath, Diane knocked softly on the conference room door. Isabel looked up, her expression wary. Lena glanced at Diane and then quickly looked down at her drawing, shrinking closer to her mother's side. "May I come in?" Diane asked, her voice gentle. Isabel hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Diane entered the room and closed the door behind her. Grateful for the small measure of privacy the glass walls couldn't provide, she took a seat across from Isabel and Lena, placing her hands flat on the table. "I want to apologize," she began, looking first at Isabel and then at Lena. "What I did was wrong. I had no right to speak to either of you that way, especially over something so small." Lena peeked up from her drawing, studying Diane with cautious eyes. Diane continued, directing her words to the little girl. "The dolphin on my keychain was a gift from my mom when I was about your age. It's special to me. But that doesn't excuse how I reacted when I saw you holding it. I'm truly sorry I scared you, Lena." The little girl's eyes widened at the mention of the keychain. "My papa had a turtle on his keys," she said softly. "It was green." Isabel squeezed her daughter's shoulder gently. "Her father gave her a similar keychain before he passed away," she explained. "She lost it last month on the school bus. I think that's why she was so drawn to yours." The revelation made Diane's heart ache. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her keys, detaching the small blue dolphin with careful fingers. "Would you like to have this one?" she asked Lena, holding out the keychain. "I think it would be happier with you than with me." Lena looked at the offered dolphin, then up at her mother, silently asking permission. Isabel hesitated. "That's very kind, but you don't have to do that." "I want to," Diane insisted. "Please." After a moment, Isabel nodded to her daughter, who reached out and carefully took the dolphin from Diane's palm, a small smile appearing on her face. "What do you say, Lena?" Isabel prompted. "Thank you," the girl whispered, already attaching the dolphin to the zipper of her backpack. Diane turned to Isabel. "I'm sorry for disrupting your workday and for my behavior." It was inexcusable. Isabel studied her for a long moment before replying. "We all have bad days," she said finally. "But thank you for the apology. It means a lot, especially to Lena." As Diane left the conference room, she was acutely aware of the eyes still following her movements. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a thoughtful silence. Mr. Patel nodded approvingly from across the room before turning back toward his office. It was a small step, Diane knew. One apology couldn't undo the damage she'd caused, and it certainly wouldn't guarantee her the promotion she'd been working toward. But for the first time that day, she felt like she might be heading in the right direction. The rest of the workday passed in a blur for Diane. She returned to her desk with a hollow feeling in her stomach, trying to focus on the mountain of emails demanding her attention. Her fingers hovered over her keyboard, but her mind kept replaying the incident. Lena's tearful face, Isabel's embarrassment, Mr. Patel's disappointment, and the judging eyes of her colleagues. By 5 o'clock, most of the office had emptied. Diane remained at her desk, partly to catch up on the work she'd neglected during the day's drama, but mostly because she couldn't face the awkward elevator rides and parking lot encounters with coworkers who had witnessed her meltdown. "You're here late," Diane looked up to find Tanya standing by her cubicle, coat draped over her arm, purse slung over her shoulder. "Just catching up," Diane replied, gesturing vaguely at her computer screen. Tanya nodded but made no move to leave. After a moment of awkward silence, she said, "I saw you give Lena your keychain. That was nice." "It was the least I could do," Diane murmured, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "It doesn't make up for how I behaved." "No," Tanya agreed, "but it's a start." She hesitated, then added, "A bunch of us are going to the corner pub for dinner. You should join." The invitation surprised Diane. She'd always kept a professional distance from her colleagues, focused on climbing the corporate ladder rather than forming friendships. Networking, she understood. Casual socializing, not so much. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said. "I doubt anyone wants to have drinks with the office villain right now." Tanya rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. What happened today was bad, but it's not like you kicked a puppy. You messed up, you apologized. People have short memories." Diane wasn't convinced, but something in Tanya's straight-talking manner made her reconsider. Maybe hiding in her cubicle wasn't the best strategy. Maybe facing her colleagues head-on was the better approach. "Okay," she said finally. "Give me 5 minutes to finish this email." The corner pub was only a short walk from the office building, a cozy establishment with dark wood paneling, soft lighting, and the comforting smell of fried food. A group from Meridian had claimed a large table in the back. Tanya, Reed, 2 accountants from the 3rd floor, and a handful of other colleagues Diane recognized but didn't know well. Conversation halted briefly when Diane approached with Tanya, then resumed with forced casualness. Reed, who had been in the middle of a story, continued without acknowledging her arrival. Diane took the only empty seat directly across from him and ordered a glass of white wine when the server came around. For the next hour, Diane nursed her drink and picked at a plate of appetizers, mostly listening as her colleagues discussed office gossip, weekend plans, and a new restaurant that had opened downtown. No one mentioned the incident with Lena and Isabel, but Diane could feel it hanging in the air, an uncomfortable presence that no one wanted to acknowledge. It was Reed who finally broke the unspoken agreement. 3 drinks in, his filter apparently loosened, he turned to Diane with a smirk. "So rough day, huh? First the Henderson proposal, then the cleaning lady's kid. Not your finest hour." The table fell silent. Tanya shot Reed a warning look, but he either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. "I heard Patel gave you quite the lecture," Reed continued, his tone just friendly enough to mask the malice beneath. "Something about the promotion being in jeopardy?" Diane felt her face grow hot. Of course Reed would know about her conversation with Mr. Patel. The glass walls of the office might as well have been speakers broadcasting her humiliation to the entire staff. "Yes," she admitted. Deciding honesty was her best defense. "I made a mistake. Actually, I made several mistakes today. The missed deadline, how I treated Lena and Isabel, none of it reflects who I want to be as a colleague or as a person." Reed seemed taken aback by her candid response. He'd clearly been hoping to embarrass her further. "You know Isabel's actually really smart," said one of the accountants. Diane thought his name was Greg or Craig. "She helped us spot an error in the Henderson account last year that saved the company a ton of money." "That's what Mr. Patel told me," Diane said. "I had no idea." "She's putting herself through school to get her accounting certificate," added a woman from HR whose name Diane couldn't remember. "Takes night classes after working 2 jobs. I don't know how she does it. And Lena's a great kid," Tanya chimed in. "Super bright. Isabel brings her in sometimes during school breaks when she can't find childcare. She just sits quietly and reads or draws, never bothers anyone." Diane felt worse with each new piece of information. "I really messed up," she said quietly. "Yeah, you did," Reed agreed, earning himself another glare from Tanya. But hey, at least it improves my chances for the promotion." He raised his glass in a mock toast, the gesture so smug that even his usual allies at the table looked uncomfortable. "Is that really all you care about?" Tanya asked him, her voice sharp. "Getting ahead no matter who gets hurt in the process?" Reed shrugged. "It's business. We're not here to make friends." "Actually," said the HR woman, "company culture is a huge part of what makes Meridian successful. Our employee satisfaction rates are among the highest in the industry precisely because people feel valued here. From the top executives to the maintenance staff." "Exactly," Tanya agreed. "Isabel and Lena are part of our community, and so is Diane, even after today's mess-up." She placed a supportive hand on Diane's shoulder. The conversation moved on after that. But something had shifted for Diane. For the first time since joining Meridian, she saw her colleagues not just as competition or networking opportunities, but as a community, one she had been too focused on her career to fully join. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Diane found herself walking out with Tanya. "Thanks for inviting me tonight," Diane said as they waited for their respective Ubers. "And for standing up for me with Reed. You didn't have to do that." Tanya shrugged. "Reed's a jerk. He's good at his job, but he'd throw his own grandmother under the bus for a promotion. Besides, we all mess up sometimes. The difference is what we do afterward." Those words stayed with Diane long after she arrived home. She kicked off her shoes, changed into comfortable clothes, and settled on her couch with a cup of tea, her mind still replaying the events of the day. What could she do to make things right? The dolphin keychain was a small gesture, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. She needed to find a way to genuinely make amends to Isabel and Lena. To show them and the rest of the office that her behavior today wasn't who she really was. Or at least, not who she wanted to be. An idea began to form in her mind. It was small at first, just a tiny spark, but the more she thought about it, the more it grew. By the time she went to bed, Diane had the beginnings of a plan. It wouldn't fix everything, but it might be a step in the right direction. The next morning, Diane arrived at the office an hour earlier than usual. The building was quiet, with only a few early birds at their desks. She went straight to the office manager's desk. "Hi, Nancy," she said to the older woman who had been managing the office operations at Meridian for over a decade. "Do you have a minute?" Nancy looked up, her expression neutral but her eyes curious. "Of course. What can I do for you?" Diane took a deep breath. "I want to talk about Isabel Rodriguez and her daughter Lena. I'm sure you heard about what happened yesterday." "News travels fast around here," Nancy acknowledged. "Not your finest moment." "No, it wasn't," Diane agreed. "And I want to make it right. I was hoping you could help me." Nancy raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm listening." For the next 20 minutes, Diane outlined her idea. The more she explained, the more enthusiastic she became. And by the end of the conversation, even Nancy, who was known for her unflappable demeanor, seemed impressed. "It's a good idea," Nancy said when Diane finished. "But you'll need Mr. Patel's approval, and you might face some resistance from other departments." "I know," Diane said, "but I think it's worth trying." Nancy studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll help you set up a meeting with Mr. Patel. And for what it's worth, I think this could be good for the company, not just for Isabel and Lena." As the office began to fill with employees, Diane returned to her desk with renewed purpose. She still had a mountain of work to catch up on from yesterday's disasters, but for the first time since the incident, she felt hopeful. Maybe there was a way to turn this massive mistake into something positive, not just for her career but for Isabel, Lena, and the entire office community. When her computer chimed with a meeting notification, 2 p.m. with Vijay Patel, Rodriguez proposal, Diane felt a flutter of nervous excitement in her stomach. She had a lot of work to do before that meeting. She needed to create a detailed proposal, gather data to support her idea, and prepare answers for the questions and objections she knew would come. But first, she had an email to write. Opening her inbox, she began to type, "Dear Isabel, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out again regarding yesterday's incident." At exactly 1:55 p.m., Diane stood outside Mr. Patel's office, clutching a folder containing her proposal. She had spent every spare minute of the morning refining her idea, gathering data and creating a presentation that she hoped would be convincing. Her regular work had taken a back seat, but for once Diane didn't mind. This felt more important than quarterly projections or client emails. She knocked on the door at precisely 2 p.m. "Come in," called Mr. Patel. To Diane's surprise, Nancy was already seated in one of the chairs facing Mr. Patel's desk. The office manager gave Diane an encouraging nod as she entered. "Nancy has given me a brief overview of your idea," Mr. Patel said, gesturing for Diane to take the other chair. "I must admit I'm intrigued. Please tell me more." Diane took a deep breath and opened her folder. "As you know, yesterday's incident with Isabel and Lena made me realize how little I knew about the people I work with every day. It also highlighted a bigger issue that affects not just Isabel, but probably many working parents at Meridian." Mr. Patel leaned forward, his expression attentive. "The problem is childcare," Diane continued. "Isabel brought Lena to work because her babysitter canceled at the last minute. This is a common problem for working parents, especially single parents like Isabel who can't afford to miss a day of work or pay for emergency childcare." "This is true," Nancy interjected. "We have several single parents on staff who struggle with this issue, particularly during school holidays and teacher workdays." Diane nodded gratefully at the support. "My proposal is to create an after-school program here at Meridian. We have that large storage room on the 5th floor that's barely used. It could be converted into a space where employees' children could come after school or on days when there's no school. They could do homework, read, or engage in quiet activities under supervision." "That's quite an undertaking," Mr. Patel observed, though his tone wasn't dismissive. "There would be considerable costs involved. Renovating the space, hiring supervisors, insurance considerations." "I've thought about that," Diane said, pulling out a spreadsheet from her folder. "I've run some preliminary numbers. The renovation would be a one-time cost, and we could do it in phases to spread out the expense. As for supervision, I was thinking we could start with a volunteer system. Employees could sign up to supervise for an hour at a time in exchange for flexibility in their own schedules. Long-term, if the program is successful, we could consider hiring a part-time coordinator." Mr. Patel studied the spreadsheet, his expression thoughtful. "What about liability concerns?" "I've spoken with legal this morning," Nancy chimed in. "They said as long as we have proper waivers signed by parents and maintain appropriate supervision ratios, our existing insurance would likely cover it. They'd need to review the final plan, of course." Diane felt a surge of gratitude toward Nancy. The office manager had clearly been doing her own legwork to support the proposal. The benefits would extend beyond just helping working parents, Diane continued. It would improve employee retention and satisfaction. Studies show that companies with family-friendly policies have lower turnover rates and higher productivity. It would also set Meridian apart from our competitors when recruiting top talent. And, Nancy added, it would reinforce our company values of community and support. It's one thing to say we're like family. It's another to actually create policies that support families. Mr. Patel sat back in his chair, tapping his fingers together as he considered the proposal. "It's an interesting idea, Diane. Unexpected coming from you, if I'm being honest." Diane felt her cheeks warm at the implied criticism, but she couldn't deny it was fair. "Yesterday was a wake-up call for me," she admitted. "I've been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder that I lost sight of what really matters. The people around me and the community we're building here." Mr. Patel studied her for a long moment. "I appreciate your candor, and I like the proposal in principle. But the board will need more than just preliminary numbers and good intentions. They'll want to see a detailed business case with projected costs, benefits, and implementation timeline." "I can put that together," Diane said quickly. "Give me a week and I'll have a comprehensive plan ready for review." Mr. Patel nodded. 1 week. "And Diane?" "This doesn't erase what happened yesterday, but it is a step in the right direction." As Diane left the office, she felt lighter than she had in days. The proposal wasn't approved yet, but Mr. Patel hadn't dismissed it outright. That was something. Nancy caught up with her in the hallway. "Not bad for a first pitch," the office manager said. "But you've got your work cut out for you now. The board isn't easily impressed." "I know," Diane agreed. "I need to make this proposal bulletproof. Would you be willing to help me? You know this company and its people better than anyone." Nancy seemed surprised by the request, but pleased. "Meet me in the conference room at 4 p.m. I'll bring the staff directory and organizational charts. We'll need to know exactly how many employees have children and what ages they are. For the next week, Diane lived and breathed the after-school program proposal. She worked on it before the office opened in the morning, during her lunch breaks, and late into the evenings. Her regular work didn't suffer, she made sure of that, but every spare moment was dedicated to refining the plan. Nancy proved to be an invaluable ally, connecting Diane with parents throughout the company to gather input on what they needed most from such a program. Tanya offered to help design the space, drawing on her previous experience as an interior designer before switching to finance. Even some of the maintenance staff volunteered to help with the renovation if the proposal was approved. The only person who seemed unimpressed by Diane's efforts was Reed. "Cute project," he remarked one afternoon, leaning against her cubicle wall. "Very charitable of you, but don't you think your time would be better spent on actual work? The Henderson account still needs attention, you know." Diane didn't rise to the bait. "This is actual work, Reed. It's about improving our workplace for everyone. And don't worry about the Henderson account. I submitted the revised proposal yesterday and Mr. Patel approved it this morning." Reed's smug expression faltered slightly. "Well, good luck with your little daycare center. I'm sure the board will be thrilled to spend company money on babysitting." As he walked away, Tanya approached from the opposite direction, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Ignore him," she advised. "He's just worried that you're gaining ground with the higher-ups. Do you really think this has a chance of being approved?" Diane asked, suddenly doubtful. "Maybe Reed's right. Maybe it's just a waste of time." "Are you kidding? The parents in this company are already buzzing about it." Nancy said 3 people from accounting asked her when they could sign up. And Mr. Patel mentioned it to the CEO yesterday during their weekly meeting. Diane's eyes widened. "He did? How do you know that?" Tanya grinned. "I have my sources, and word is the CEO likes the idea. She's been pushing for more family-friendly policies for years." Hope bloomed in Diane's chest. Maybe this really could work. The day before her follow-up meeting with Mr. Patel, Diane was putting the finishing touches on her presentation when she noticed Isabel cleaning the break room. Lena wasn't with her today, but the little blue dolphin keychain was now attached to the zipper of Isabel's uniform pocket, apparently a memento that mother and daughter shared. Taking a deep breath, Diane approached her. "Isabel, do you have a minute?" The cleaning woman looked up, her expression guarded but not hostile. "Hello, Ms. Wells. Please call me Diane," she insisted. "I was wondering if I could talk to you about something. It's about Lena, sort of." Isabel's protective instinct immediately flared in her eyes. "Is there a problem?" No problem," Diane assured her quickly. "Actually, I wanted to ask for your input on a project I'm working on. It's a proposal for an after-school program here at Meridian, for employees' children. Since Lena would potentially be one of the kids using the space, I wanted to get your thoughts on what would make it work best for you both." Isabel stared at her for a moment, clearly surprised. "You're serious?" "Completely serious. The proposal goes to the board tomorrow, and I want to make sure it reflects the real needs of working parents like you." Slowly, Isabel set down her cleaning supplies and took a seat at one of the break room tables. Diane joined her, opening her tablet to take notes. For the next half hour, Isabel shared insights that Diane realized she never would have considered on her own. Practical concerns about homework supervision, the importance of quiet spaces for children with sensory sensitivities like Lena, healthy snack options, and the logistics of pickup times that aligned with different work schedules. "This would make such a difference for us," Isabel said finally, a note of wonder in her voice. "Do you really think the company will approve it?" "I hope so," Diane replied honestly. "I've done everything I can to make the business case strong. But regardless of what happens with the proposal, I want you to know how sorry I am about what happened with Lena. It was inexcusable." Isabel studied her for a long moment. "You know, when I first came to this country, I had a master's degree in accounting and 5 years of experience at a major bank. But my credentials weren't recognized here, so I took whatever jobs I could find to support my family. The hardest part wasn't the physical work or even the lower pay. It was the way some people looked through me, as if I was invisible. Or worse, the way they looked down on me, assuming I was uneducated or unintelligent because I was cleaning their offices. Diane felt shame wash over her again. "I'm one of those people who looked past you." "I'm truly sorry." "Yes, you were," Isabel agreed candidly. "But now you're seeing me." "That's a start." She stood up, gathering her cleaning supplies. "I need to finish my rounds, but thank you for asking for my input. And good luck with your proposal." As Isabel walked away, Diane sat at the table a moment longer, reflecting on their conversation. She had begun this project as a way to make amends for her behavior, but somewhere along the way it had become about so much more than that. It was about creating real change, not just for Isabel and Lena, but for everyone at Meridian. The next morning, as Diane prepared to present her proposal to the board, she felt nervous but confident. Whatever happened, she knew she had already changed, and hopefully for the better. The boardroom of Meridian Financial was intimidating even on a good day. With its long mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and the serious faces of the company's leadership team, it was designed to impress and perhaps intimidate. Today, standing at the head of that table with her presentation materials ready, Diane felt both nervous and strangely calm. Nervous because so much was riding on this proposal. Calm because, for the first time in her career, she was fighting for something bigger than her own advancement. "Thank you all for taking the time to hear my proposal," Diane began, making eye contact with each board member. Mr. Patel gave her an encouraging nod from his seat near the CEO, a woman in her 50s named Vivian Chen, known for her sharp business acumen and no-nonsense approach. For the next 20 minutes, Diane presented her vision for the Meridian after-school program. She outlined the costs, the benefits, the implementation timeline, and the potential return on investment in terms of employee retention, productivity, and company reputation. She shared stories from parents within the company who struggled with childcare issues, being careful to keep their identities private while conveying their challenges. In conclusion, Diane said, coming to the end of her presentation, this program would not only support our working parents but would also reinforce Meridian's commitment to being a company that truly values its employees at all levels. It would set us apart from our competitors and potentially attract top talent who prioritize work-life balance. When she finished, there was a moment of silence as the board members exchanged glances and reviewed their notes. Then the questions began. "The initial cost seems high," noted the CFO, a bespectacled man named Howard. "How do you justify that expense when we're cutting budgets in other departments?" "The cost is front-loaded," Diane explained. "The renovation of the space is the largest expense. Once that's complete, the ongoing costs are relatively modest, especially if we implement the volunteer supervision system in the first phase. And while the financial return might not be immediately visible on a balance sheet, the data shows that companies with family-friendly policies see lower turnover rates, which saves significant recruiting and training costs in the long run." Another board member, the head of marketing, spoke up. "I like the potential PR benefits. We could definitely leverage this in our recruitment materials and corporate social responsibility reporting." Several more questions followed, some supportive, others skeptical. Diane answered each one calmly and thoroughly, drawing on the research she'd conducted and the input she'd gathered from parents throughout the company. Finally, Ms. Chen, who had been quietly observing until now, leaned forward. "This is an interesting proposal, Ms. Wells, but I'm curious about your motivation. This seems like a departure from your usual focus." The question was direct, perhaps even slightly suspicious. Diane took a deep breath, deciding that honesty was her best approach. "You're right, it is a departure for me," she acknowledged. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have given this issue a second thought, but then something happened that made me reevaluate my priorities. Briefly, without dwelling on the negative details, Diane recounted her encounter with Lena and Isabel and how it had opened her eyes to the challenges faced by working parents at Meridian, especially those in positions that offered less flexibility. "I realized that my narrow focus on my own career path had blinded me to the needs of others in our community," she concluded. "This proposal comes from a genuine desire to make Meridian a better place for everyone, not just for executives and managers, but for all employees, regardless of their position." Ms. Chen studied Diane for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to Mr. Patel. "VJ, you've worked closely with Ms. Wells. What's your assessment of this proposal and her ability to see it through?" Mr. Patel didn't hesitate. I believe both the proposal and Ms. Wells's commitment to it are genuine. She's put an extraordinary amount of work into this in a very short time, all while maintaining her regular responsibilities. The level of detail and thought in the planning indicates to me that she's serious about making this succeed. Ms. Chen nodded, then looked around the table. Any other questions or comments before we vote? The head of HR raised a hand. I'd like to note that we've been discussing some form of child care assistance in our benefits committee for over a year. This proposal could be a practical solution to a need we've already identified. I'm in favor. After a few more comments, Ms. Chen called for a vote. Diane held her breath as hands were raised around the table. When the count was complete, Ms. Chen turned to her with a small smile. Congratulations, Ms. Wells. Your proposal has been approved for a 1-year pilot program. We'll evaluate its success at the end of that period to determine if it will continue. You'll work with HR and facilities to implement the program, with a target launch date of 3 months from now. Relief and joy washed over Diane. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Thank you, everyone. I won't let you down. As the meeting adjourned and board members filed out of the room, Mr. Patel approached Diane. Well done, he said quietly. This doesn't happen often, the board approving a new initiative on the first presentation. I had a lot of help, Diane admitted. Nancy, Tanya, even Isabel, they all contributed to making this proposal as strong as it could be. That's another change I've noticed in you, Mr. Patel observed. You're learning the value of collaboration. It's an important quality in a leader. Before Diane could respond, Ms. Chen approached them. Ms. Wells, I'd like a word in private. Mr. Patel excused himself, leaving Diane alone with the CEO. I have to admit, I was skeptical when Vijay first mentioned your proposal, Ms. Chen said. It seemed out of character, based on what I knew of your work here. Diane nodded, unsure how to respond. But, Ms. Chen continued, I believe in second chances and in people's capacity for growth. The incident with Isabel and her daughter could have been just an embarrassing moment that you tried to forget. Instead, you turned it into an opportunity to create something positive for the entire company. That shows character and leadership potential. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Don't thank me yet, the CEO said with a slight smile. I'm putting you in charge of the program implementation. It will be in addition to your regular duties, at least for now. Consider it a test, not just of the program's viability, but of your leadership skills. As Diane left the boardroom, her mind was already racing with next steps. The space would need to be renovated, policies drafted, safety measures implemented, and volunteers recruited. It was a massive undertaking, but for the first time in her career, Diane felt excited about a project that wasn't directly tied to her advancement. Her first stop was Nancy's office to share the good news. They approved it, Diane announced as she entered. Nancy looked up from her computer, a genuine smile spreading across her usually reserved face. I had a feeling they would. Congratulations. I couldn't have done it without your help, Diane said sincerely. And there's more. Ms. Chen put me in charge of implementation. I'm going to need your expertise more than ever. Count me in, Nancy replied. And I think I know who else will want to hear this news. 20 minutes later, Diane found Isabel in the 5th floor supply closet organizing cleaning products. Isabel, Diane called softly, not wanting to startle her. Do you have a minute? I have some news. Isabel turned, her expression curious. About the after-school program. Yes, the board just approved it for a 1-year pilot. We're aiming to open in 3 months, Isabel's eyes widened. Really? It's actually happening? It's happening, Diane confirmed. And I want to offer you a role in it if you're interested. We'll need someone to coordinate the daily operations once it's up and running. Scheduling volunteers, organizing activities, making sure everything runs smoothly. It would be part-time at first in addition to your current position, but with additional pay. And if the program continues beyond the pilot, it could become a full-time role. Isabel stared at her in disbelief. Are you serious? But I'm not. I don't have experience running a program like that. You're organized, reliable, and you understand what working parents and their children need. Plus, you have an accounting background, which will be helpful for managing the program's budget. We can provide any training you might need for specific aspects of the role. For a moment, Isabel seemed at a loss for words. Then she straightened her shoulders and met Diane's gaze directly. I would be honored to accept the position. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for being willing to take it on, Diane replied. And please thank Lena for me too. None of this would have happened if she hadn't been curious about a little blue dolphin. 6 months later, the Meridian after-school program was flourishing. The once empty storage room on the 5th floor had been transformed into a bright, welcoming space where employees' children gathered after school. One section was dedicated to quiet study, with desks and computers for homework. Another offered board games, art supplies, and comfortable seating for reading and relaxation. A small kitchenette provided healthy snacks, and a schedule on the wall listed the employee volunteers for each hour. Diane stood in the doorway, watching as Lena helped a younger child with a puzzle. The little girl was thriving in her role as one of the big kids who assisted the younger children. Isabel moved around the room, checking in with the volunteer supervisors and making notes on her tablet. She had taken to her coordinator role with natural skill and was already talking about expanding the program to include school holiday coverage. "Quite a change from 6 months ago," said a voice beside Diane. She turned to find Mr. Patel observing the scene with approval. "It's been amazing to see it come together," Diane agreed. "The feedback from parents has been overwhelmingly positive. Several have reported that they're more productive at work knowing their children are safe and engaged just a few floors away." "And what about you?" Mr. Patel asked. "Any regrets about the time you've invested in this project?" Diane considered the question. The past 6 months had been among the most challenging of her career, as she balanced her regular responsibilities with overseeing the program implementation. There had been obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But watching the children engaged in their activities, seeing the relief on parents' faces when unexpected work obligations arose and they didn't have to worry about childcare, those moments had made every late night worth it. "No regrets," she said firmly. "This has taught me more about leadership than any promotion could have." Mr. Patel nodded, seeming pleased with her answer. "Speaking of promotions, the leadership team will be meeting next week to discuss the senior management position. Your name is at the top of the list." Diane felt a flutter of excitement, but it was different from the desperate ambition that had driven her before. "Whatever happens, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of this," she said, gesturing to the room full of children. As Mr. Patel walked away, Lena noticed Diane in the doorway and waved enthusiastically. Diane waved back, thinking about how a simple blue dolphin keychain had changed the course of not just her career, but her understanding of what truly mattered in building a community. Sometimes the smallest things, like a curious child reaching for a shiny object, could lead to the biggest transformations. And while no one had been smiling in those tense moments after Diane had snatched her keys from Lena's hands, now the room was filled with nothing but smiles, including, most importantly, her own.